Um, my story, I guess I would have to say it started as a young child. And domestic violence was not something I've ever heard of. That wasn't a conversation we've had in our home, we've had in our family. I was from time to time see family members have arguments, but I just thought that was just part of being in a relationship. And even in my own home, I always said my dad didn't hit my mom, my dad didn't abuse my mom, my dad didn't, um, you know, raise his voice. He was just, to me, this calm person that just didn't like confrontation. Um, my mom, she was the more verbal. She was the more, she's going to express how she felt about things. And because of my lack of understanding what domestic violence was, I just felt like if I did not see the actual hitting or fighting, that was the only type of abuse that there was. And so as I got older, I realized that even in my relationship with my dad, he's always been in my life, but he was just that type of person that you knew he loved you, but you didn't have to hear him say it. You just kind of understood that. My mom was more verbal about telling us she loved us, or hey, if anybody touch you or do anything to you, tell me. Or she would periodically ask us about things, and we just kind of felt like, why is she asking us that? No. And sometimes she would be very adamant about it. But one of the things I realized as I got older, when my mom and my dad got divorced, I was angry. And for some reason, I felt like I was angry at my mom, because I felt like, well, what did you do? Why did he leave? And not even realizing some of the underlying issues, because I didn't see it. I just felt like it didn't happen. And I remember I got pregnant at an early age. I was 15 years old. And my mom, she fussed, whatever, and told me to get out, but by the time I got to school, she called and said I can come back home. But for my dad, it was different. He said, the only thing I remember my dad saying was, what's his name and do he have a job? And I'm sitting there like, is that it? Like, aren't you going to fuss? Aren't you going to say, like, I wanted him to say more, because then I felt like he showed me he cared. But I was, in that moment, I think it created something in me that an even bigger void, because I really didn't know how my dad felt. My dad I didn't see a healthy relationship growing up in home. I didn't see us doing things as family, my mom and dad doing things together, or things that a lot of times, I think if we ate dinner, most time my dad would come in after. And so for me, what was a healthy relationship, I didn't know. And so for years, I felt like I disappointed my parents. And because I felt that disappointment, that's when shame came in for me. I was the youngest of all my classmates to be pregnant, to have a child. So I started dealing with my own rejection. I think I was about 13. And that's when I met, my children's father. And so we pretty much grew up together. But it was almost like I was looking for something in him that I should have already had, and looking for him to affirm some things that should have already been in place. And so I guess I could remember the first instance of me being abused was when I was 16 years old. I could remember I had gotten out of school one day, and I went to his sister's house, and he wasn't there. So I remember walking around the street to my aunt's house. And so when I came back, it was like, where were you? I came and you wasn't here. And that was the first time that he had ever put his hands on me. And in that moment, a lot of people would think, well, why didn't you just leave? Why, if he did that, he was going to do it again. But because I did not have knowledge of this, I thought, maybe subconsciously, I thought that's how relationships are. People get into it, people fight. But that was the place, it created a fear in me that, I didn't know how to react, so I just did nothing. I pretty much froze, like, did this just happen? And prior to that, there were no signs, at least I thought. There was not, it wasn't jealousy, it wasn't where you going, why you didn't call me, no. It was none of that. So I think that's how I missed it, because I was looking for the usual signs that people will tell you, and I missed it. And I didn't know anything about verbal abuse, psychological, sexual, financial. I didn't know anything about those parts. Only thing I could relate abuse to was the physical, and the physical was where it started for me. It didn't escalate from being verbally abused. It wasn't little subtle things that were happening that should have gave me a sign that it was coming. It just kind of happened all of a sudden. And so that was the beginning of my experience with domestic violence. I remember being in high school, going from going to school every day to hardly going to school because I'm just really in a bad place. And even at this time, I had left my mom's home. I was staying with him and his sister. And so I had got into really a deep place. It was like I didn't tell anybody what was going on. And in my mind, I was just hoping somebody would ask. But I remember having a conversation with my mom, and she asked, "Why did you stay so long?" And I said, "I don't know if that's something I can answer." I said, "But I will tell you, I've never seen a healthy relationship." So I had nothing to model off of. And I said, and also, people don't realize that when people are going through abuse, like, they need so much support. They need people that are patient. They need people that are non-judgmental. And so for me, I felt like I was getting ultimatums from the abuser, and I was getting ultimatums from my family. So in that case, I did nothing. I just shut down. I functioned, but I didn't function. But over the years, even as the physical abuse kind of wasn't as much, but the verbal, it escalated. And I tell people, sometimes, depending on the situation, the verbal and the psychological is worse than the physical. Because the physical it may hurt for a moment, but that pain kind of goes away. But the verbal and emotional continues to play in your mind. And that's the place where people don't understand, where it's not that easy for women to walk away. And it's not that they like it, but it's because they've come accustomed to the dysfunction, and that's how they function. And unless you've been in that situation, you'll never truly understand the mindset of someone that's in an abusive relationship, because for them, some of the things they do is how they survive, is how they make it to the next day. When I got to the point, I would say maybe 2002, I was working at Jackson Hospital, and I remember one of the co-workers, she was always come down to the department. She would talk to me about God and talk to me about, are you in church? Are you going to church? And I said, and she would invite me to Fresh Anointing, and I said, I'm going, and but Sunday come, I go, not go, and then she'll come back. Did you go to church? No, I didn't go. I'm gonna come back. We did that probably for about a month. One thing I realized, that I said, my life isn't getting any better, so I have to do something different. But I was angry at God, and that was because before that I would go to church, but I pulled away because I remember asking God, where are you? Why aren't you helping me? You see what I'm going through. So I became angry at God. And so I finally came to Fresh Anointing, and I came that one time, and I really liked it. But after that day, I didn't come back for about a month or so. And things had gotten crazy within that time. It had gotten very crazy. I said, well, I got to do something. So I started coming, and I became intentional about coming. every time the doors open, I was here. The church became my safe haven. I knew if I just got there, I didn't worry, I didn't think about nothing. Even though I know when I go home, it was a different environment. But when I came to church, it's just everything else was just blocked out. I don't remember how long I was here before I just realized that, God, I gotta establish my own relationship with you. And so I remember going to Pastor Cal and telling him about what happened. And he connected me with some other ladies in church. And he was the only, even though people may have known, but he was the only man I had ever opened up to about what was going on. And so he connected me with people in the church. There was only one that I really made a connection with, which was Tawana Attitude. She has been with me like from just coming into the church broken in a bad place to where I am now. She has followed me on that journey. She was the one when I'm having anxiety because my body had got so conditioned to know when there's going to be a fight or argument. My body would just get very uneasy. My stomach would just start just turning, and I would have to call her, look, I'm having anxiety, I'm having a good day, I need you to pray with me. She would share words of encouragement, and she did that for years. There are times she would just tell me every time, she said, you're coming out. And I held on to those words because I'm like, is it today? Is it tomorrow? What? I didn't know. But I know also that the enemy also wanted to create fear, because even one of the times I said, I'm leaving, the enemy started saying, well, you're safer if you stay. He may try to kill you. He may try to stalk you. And so all those thoughts, and because of the fear, it kept me there 5 years longer. And so I remember watching the movie Esther. And that is really what gave me the last straw. Was like, you got to get out. And I remember it was the part where Mordecai asked her to go before the king. And she went, and she knew she had to be summoned, and she knew that, it could cost her life by doing that. But the word she said was, if I perish, let me perish, but I'm going anyway. And those words just kind of rung in my ear. So that last time when he attacked me, and in that last one, I think was the first time I had really major injuries, because I had to go to the ER because I was hit in the back of the head with an iron, and I had to get, I think, about 12 staples. And I remember walking into my mom's house, and my oldest daughter just started crying. And I'm like, I can't do this. And so I made up my mind. I said, God, whatever has to happen is just going to happen, but I'm walking away. And that was May 9th of 2009. This year is going on 11 years that I walked away and did not turn back. And in 2013, I've always had a heart for women, and it was always like women always talk to me about things that are going on, and I'm thinking, Lord, if they only knew what I was going through, they wouldn't talk to me. But I realized God was doing something that I didn't have a clue about. And so in 2013 is when I decided to start a nonprofit organization called Women of Refined Gold. But at first I couldn't think of a name. I'm thinking of everything like purple something, whatever, purple flower. And I remember God reminded me about what he had spoken to me in 2007. And he took me to Job 23:10. That also talks about refine and go. And I said, I knew it had to be God, because I didn't know the scriptures, and I didn't know, I would have never thought it was in there. And so God knew I didn't quite understand. So he broke it down. He said, gold goes through the process of purification. And in order for the impurities to be burnt off, it has to go through a high level of heat. And he said, you're going to go through some things, and you're going to feel some things, but when you come out, you'll come out good as gold. And so I held on to that, not even knowing what that even meant or what I was supposed to do with that. And so I remember maybe it was a year later after I started, I met a guy and he said my church wanted to know how gold goes through the process. And he said that the lady went out, she got the information. But what really stuck out to me in that conversation was the lady asked him, she said, well, how do you know when the gold is refined? And he said, when I can see myself in it. And in that moment, I realized what God was saying based off a question I asked him in '07, God, where are you? Why have you left me? And he was showing me, I never left you. You were going to have to go through the process. You were going to have to go through some things. Not all of it was going to feel good, but if you keep trusting me, that you were going to come out good as gold. And so that has been the very, I guess, the essence of our existence, or why we came into existence, or why this organization was started. I tell people it's not a faith-based organization, but I talk about what God did for me.